Hi, the seasoned spouse here, and wanted to chat with you guys today about a very important but sometimes controversial topic of whether or not military unit family events should be oriented toward children only, or specifically to adults, or perhaps somewhere in between that would include both types of families. So I chose to talk about whether or not children should always be involved in family events, because this is the time of year when military units are planning their holiday party, their Christmas gathering, and they want to include as many families as possible. And sometimes that means a bounce house and a visit with Santa and tables full of cookies, which is really great for families with children like mine, for example. We have 4 kids. We really appreciate the unit events that are like that. However, it is important to acknowledge that not everyone has children. Not everyone is interested in bounce houses and cookies. And so I think there are ways that family events can be more inclusive and a little bit more accommodating to people with children, people without children, and anyone in between. So I wanted to start today by sharing 2 stories with you of what not to do when planning family unit events. And please feel free to join in and share whether or not you've had a similar experience or whether or not you have a way to solve one of these problems. So the first is from one of our original units when we were married. My husband was with a large battalion, a regular deploying line unit. And so there were about 1,000 Marines in that unit, which meant hundreds of family members. And because we were young, that was the duty station where I had 2 of our children. He deployed several times. So I was very focused on having babies and toddlers and trying to finish my degree online, managing the first house that we had ever owned together. That's where I was in my life. And now this military unit had a family readiness person assigned to it. In the Marine Corps, they call it a FRO, which is Family Readiness Officer. The Army says FRG, and I think the Navy says Ombudsman, but the job is essentially the same. It's a full-time position, someone whose job is to communicate between the families and the unit. They plan events to either provide classes for the families or resources or support or social get-togethers. So it turned out that the FRO for that unit was someone who did not have children. And therefore, during my husband's first 2 deployments of our marriage, the only family events that were organized were things like going to the spa for the day, or going shopping as a group, or going out to a fancy dinner once a month. And these were just things that were completely unrealistic for me as a new young mom. There were some people in the unit that appreciated it. There were some people who were able to participate, but it was really a small handful because so many people in the group were like me. They were young parents living on just one military income. They did not have a lot of extra money for babysitting or for spa days or for shopping. So planning events like that might work for a small handful of people, but they're not going to be an effective way to accommodate your entire unit and to really include the most amount of families. So if you have ever been in a unit like that, by all means, do a thumbs up or a like if you have been in a unit where you were the one with the young children and the organizers were the ones who had no clue what families actually needed. Now, on the other hand, I have had the opposite experience with a different unit. We were once stationed with a somewhat small unit where the CO had children and the XO had children, and most families in the unit had children. So when they were planning the family Christmas party, there were wrapped gifts for every child in the unit, and there was a visit from Santa. There was a bounce house and big Christmas inflatables outside, and there was a table full of Christmas treats and hot chocolate, which was great for families like mine that have a lot of children. And yet, at this military unit, this mandatory fun day event, I see all the people that don't have children and all the single service members who were invited to participate are just standing around with nothing to do except watch children that they don't know bouncing in a bounce house, because this event was not planned considering them and their needs. So I am aware that there are many people who don't have children, and that's totally okay. No one says you have to have kids if you're a military family. And military units should recognize that and appreciate that and accommodate that, so that they're not leaving out an entire group of people by planning child-centric events. So let's do a quick poll of my audience. If you're watching now, feel free to vote. You can do a thumbs up like if you are a family that has young children, and you can do a heart if you are a family that does not have any children. So feel free to let me know who's watching. And then I want to talk about how we can perhaps find some middle ground that will accommodate both families with children and without. So the first thing to understand is that if it's a military unit event, then there has to be some accommodation for families with children. Realistically, this is a very large demographic. People in the military are young. This is when they are getting married, starting families, and there are an awful lot of babies and toddlers and children in military line companies. And that's fine. But there needs to be realistic preparation and expectation if these families are expected to attend mandatory fun events. So there's easy ways to provide childcare that don't need to be expensive and elaborate. You can have adult-centric activities, and you can invite the families that have children as long as there is some type of accommodation for the children during the event. Because realistically, people that are living on one military income, they're not going to hire a babysitter for a night to go to a unit class or a military resource activity. That's just not realistic. If I pay for a babysitter, which is a somewhat rare event, it's going to be for a date night with my husband. It's not going to be to attend a class on preparing for deployment. So if you want to get families there, you can't expect everyone with children to hire a babysitter and pay out of pocket for that experience. So some cheap, easy ways to provide childcare are things that we've done in the past with different units that we've been part of. If it is a large unit event and something that's very important and essential for everyone to participate in, think pre-deployment brief or deployment information session. That's something where you really want to be inclusive of all your families, even the ones with young children. So you can either allow babies to be brought to the briefing, to the event, or you can provide an activity in another room, such as the free class known as Warrior Kids. That is a class that's already offered on base. The teachers and the outline already exist, and the whole purpose is to prepare children for deployment. So if you want to do an adult-centric deployment briefing in one room, just simultaneously hold the Warrior Kids class in another room. And that'll accommodate children that are school age. If you have children that are even younger than that, you may want to arrange for a volunteer to be in a third room with babies and toddlers, just to kind of keep the noise level down. So it's great when units can plan for those different age groups and plan activities for those events. And Lola points out that if the event is family oriented, it should include all ages. If it's a squadron party at night, have sitters on site with activities in another room, and see if another squadron would volunteer personnel, then do the same for them. That is great. I love that. So it's a little bit like what I was just saying with deployment briefs and Warrior Kids. If you can plan events in 2 separate rooms at the same location, that's ideal. But I love Lola's idea of cooperating with another squadron, another unit. On a military base, there's usually lots of different units, and you don't need to handle everything on your own with your own unit. There's usually a family readiness advisor, a family readiness group, a family readiness officer, with each unit so they can collaborate and work together. And they'll say, hey, we'll do the childcare for your event if you'll do the one for ours the week afterwards. So that's a great way to handle it. And exactly, Wendy, I'm going to get to that. Wendy says because she doesn't have children, they've often felt weird going to some of the unit events. And that is exactly what I want to address today, because you are not alone. I know that there are a lot of child-free couples out there, and that's often how they feel going to these very child-centric family activities. So that's the way to handle childcare if you're doing a large unit event. For some of our smaller events, especially during deployment, again, it's unrealistic to expect moms with multiple children to pay for a babysitter during deployment just to attend a social event or a spouse's get-together or something like that. That's just not going to happen. So we have partnered with some local churches near our base that have adopted different units on the base. And that way, when we want to do a get-together during the deployment, the church group it's a large church. They already have the resources and the people and the volunteers in place to do kids club at their churches during some of their church events. So if we want to hold an event on base, they just bring their volunteer team and they do drawing activities and outdoor sports and stickers and a little childcare corner for the babies. And that way it's a free and easy way to have some childcare on site while the spouses can get together and just have some kid-free time, some adult conversations. Sometimes we've done some class and instructional information sharing resources during that time. But that's a great way to provide childcare for a medium-sized unit function. And then sometimes if it's a smaller event organized by the spouses themselves during a deployment, like just a ladies' night, a social get-together, if it's on base or with a group of people that live close together, then one thing that we've done is to team up and have the event held at one house, which is for the adults and the spouses. And then right next door, we'll hire some babysitters. Everyone pools their money together. We hire 2 or 3 babysitters, and they can watch the kids at a house right next door. And that way it's a nice adult evening for the people in the adult house, but they're also available and right there if anything is happening and anything is needed with their kids next door. So that's another way to accommodate families with and without children at the same event, as long as there's a child care possibility on the side. So those are some ways that units can plan with keeping children's needs in mind and young families' needs in mind. But now I want to address the other side, like Wendy brought up. There are plenty of child-free couples in the military. There is absolutely no guilt and no shaming here. There's no rule that you need to have children to be a military family. So I am not at all here to judge. I am only here to discuss the fact that we are not planning very good events for our child-free couples. What can we do to fix that? So I think that you need to realistically look at the demographics of your unit. And in any military unit, there's going to be single service members who are not yet married. There's going to be young couples that have recently gotten married but don't have any children. There's going to be couples with young children, sometimes multiple. And then there's going to be couples with older children, the middle school, high school, college age, that are not so much interested in the bounce houses anymore. So that's a lot of different demographics, a lot of different age groups. And we need to be planning for all of them if we're truly going to have a family event or a mandatory fun day. So what are some of the ways that we can accommodate the child-free couples? I welcome your comments. I'd love to hear them, but I have some of my ideas as well. And Wendy, yes, I understand that some military couples are not child-free by choice, and I'm not here to make light of that situation or to belittle that at all. I know that it can be very frustrating and traumatizing sometimes for people that want to have children and for whatever reason cannot. So I want to invite everyone here to feel comfortable and be part of this discussion. So Amy asks, why can't we have both? Why can't we have events that accommodate people with children and people without? And yes, I think that we can. That's ideally what we're looking for, because if we're planning a unit event, especially if it's something like the holiday party, they're not going to plan 3 different parties. There's not going to be one for the families with kids and one for the child-free families and one for the single service members. The funding is not there. The time and the amount of volunteers is not there. There has to be one big event that can accommodate everyone. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So some ideas for accommodating either older kids or couples that don't yet have children or don't want to have children would be, first of all, the timing of your event. Please consider holding events in the evenings or on weekends. This will help the spouses who work. This will help those with older children who are in school. And this will accommodate the service members as well. I know sometimes they want to hold events during the day because the service members say, hey, if it's a mandatory fun thing, I don't want to waste my weekend going to a mandatory fun event. So the service members sometimes vote to hold it in the middle of the afternoon. That way they get out of work a little bit early. They kind of get a break. But this really doesn't work for the families with children in school or for families where the spouse is at work. You don't want to have to always request off of work to go to your spouse's mandatory fun event for their unit. So if you hold events in the evening or on the weekends, usually that is more inclusive and can accommodate everyone in the unit, those with children, without, young children, old children. Everyone can work better with those evening and weekend hours. Also, when you're scheduling unit activities for an event, please consider what the people without children will be doing during this event. If the main focus is a bounce house and a visit from Santa and handing out gifts, that's really fun for kids and really boring for those who don't have kids. So just think ahead of time. What are people going to be doing at this event? Are they going to be primarily eating? Are they going to be participating in an activity? Are they going to be doing a craft or a service project? And it's okay to have a craft room for the kids and simultaneously an adult activity happening in another room. That can work, but just think ahead of time about what everyone in different situations will be doing. So some adult-friendly activities that do not have to involve children are things like a raffle or a silent auction or a gift exchange where, adults can bring anonymous gifts and then choose a wrapped gift out of the pile. And that can be a really fun activity as long as the gifts are, fun for anyone, not just for parents. And then also you could even play generic games like bingo, any type of group game. So when you are planning out activities and gift baskets and prizes, again, please consider prizes that will be fun for any adult, not just someone that has children. You don't want to be handing out the gift basket of toys or of Disney movie DVD package to a family that doesn't have kids and isn't interested in that. So when you're planning gifts and door prizes and giveaways, think of generic things that everyone likes. Food is a great choice. Any type of pampering products. What else did I write down? I didn't write down. I just wrote focus on food. So you can do lots of different themed packages with hot chocolate and snacks and wine and desserts. And all of those are fine for any adult, whether or not they are a parent. And I see Lindsay has joined the conversation. Thank you. She agrees with Lola. If you hold an event and do not want it to be a family party, have on-site childcare, and then the parents can come. Moving around so much, it's so hard to find and trust new people to watch your kids for you. Lindsay, I feel your pain. I have 4 children, and we move every 3 years. So they are constantly different ages, different situations. Always finding a new babysitter when we move is ridiculous. And then I find one and then my babysitter moves. So it is a constant challenge for me, and I'm sure for many military parents. And realistically, when I have to pay for childcare for 4 children, I am not going to hire a babysitter for a unit event, especially if it's something like a class or an optional activity that would be a nice to do, but not a need to do. That's not where I'm going to use my babysitting money. So when you're trying to accommodate a large number of people, if you really want that spouse participation, you have to provide some type of on-site childcare. So I discussed some of those options earlier. Right now, we were discussing how to accommodate some of the older kids and child-free couples by just thinking, how are they going to be involved at the event? Are there going to be prizes and activities that are suitable for them? And how can we make everyone feel included and comfortable? So another thing to consider is to invite single people, the single service members or child-free couples to specifically be involved with a role at the event. Give them a job to do, give them a reason to be there. Often they want to be included and they just aren't sure where they fit in at a kids' party with a bounce house and cookies. So if you want them to, if they are willing, I'm not saying use your child-free couples like, servants or slave labor or anything. I am not suggesting that. I am saying for those volunteers who want to be involved and are looking for a job to do, then by all means, let them be a decorator, let them be a greeter, give them a specific thing that they can be involved in planning this event and offering their talent and offering their creativity and making it successful. Because often you're going to get some of your best ideas from people that have more time and aren't worrying with their children and aren't juggling their kids the day of the event. So listen to their input, listen to their ideas, and if they offer to be the one setting things up or making centerpieces or putting together a gift basket, then please use their talents and include them. Don't make them feel like this is a kid-only event and that they have no reason to be there. So that is most of my ideas for accommodating both families with children and families without children. And I just want to hear from you if you have been at a mandatory fun event for your military unit. Did you feel like there was something that they did successfully to include all the families, or were there times when you felt like you were really out of place and uncomfortable at the event? So if you've had either one of those experiences, please leave a comment, let me know, and I will definitely be reading these afterwards, and I'll respond afterwards too. But I brought it up today because I just think it's a really important topic as we are approaching the time of year where units are planning their holiday events and their holiday parties. I have seen this done successfully in some units, and then I've seen it done very poorly in other units. And there's always going to be discussion and feedback from both sides. There's always going to be someone who feels like the time is inconvenient or the location is inconvenient. But realistically, if we are considering the different demographics in our military unit, there's going to be a lot of families with young children, and we absolutely have to accommodate that. We can't just expect them to be paying for babysitters every time there's a unit event. So there has to be a consideration and a plan for the families with children if we want them to be involved. But just as importantly, there has to be a consideration that people are going to be there without children or with older children, and they don't want to be participating in the craft table or the bounce house or the lollipop tree. So we need to have just as much thoughtful consideration for those couples. So if you wanted to say anything else about ways that you've seen this done successfully or unsuccessfully, please feel free to comment. And as we go forward and you get involved in planning your own unit Christmas parties and holiday events, I just ask you to please keep both of those demographics in mind and please give equal consideration to everyone so that we can include as many families as possible and have everyone feeling comfortable and relaxed at the unit events. And that way, hopefully the mandatory fun can be a little bit more fun for everyone. So that's all today from the Seasoned Spouse. It's been great chatting with you all, and I will see you in the comments. Bye.